Boker Tov. Great to see everyone this morning. Wonderful to see everybody here and the beautiful opportunity to learn together and to learn the teachings of Rav Kook. Let me just begin with the sponsors for our shir this morning. We have a regular sponsor, the Eloi Nishmas Miriam Bas Avram Alav Hashem B'Shem Tov Ben Shlomo Zichron Livracha. We have an additional sponsor today as well, dedicated in memory of Mali and Bob Swirsky, in honor of their great love of humanity. And I'll add one more sponsor, a Eloi Neshama to my mother-in-law, passed away just over a week ago. My wife just got up from Shiva the other morning. And her name, Yehudis Rezel Bas Yitzchak Visara, Zichrona Livracha, a very, very special woman. And I have her, and all of us have her in mind as we learn this morning. So we're studying a beautiful, wonderful book of Rav Kook, a collection which is known as Midot HaRa'aya, which is the character traits that all of us are working to improve and to master in our lives. We're in a section which is called Emunah, which is faith. A couple of weeks ago, we looked at the idea of faith in God. What does that mean from the perspective of Rav Kook? And this morning, we're looking at another aspect of Emunah, which I think is very much captures the thought of Rav Kook, and something that I think speaks to all of us, especially those that live in Israel who have made Aliyah. And Rav Kook is going to talk about the importance of Emunah in the future, in perfecting the world, Emunah in the coming of the Mashiach. And that's another aspect of Emunah. When we think about Emunah in our lives, we think about Emunah in Hashem, and then there's Emunah in certain principles. And one of the very important principles of faith is this idea, the idea that we're moving to greater perfection. We're moving closer and closer to the end of days, to the days of Mashiach. And let us open with the words of Rav Kook. So this is from a sefer called Midot HaRa'aya. It's a section called Emunah. This is the 11th piece, Yud Aleph, and let's open with some words of Rav Kook. Ota Hashkafa, this is the top of page 1, right under the Yud Aleph. Ota Hashkafat Olam, that very unique perspective on the world, Tihiyeh Gluya Lakol La'atid Lavo, that will be revealed to everyone in the future, Kishiyit Chadesh Olam, when the world will be renewed, V'yetzei Me'eru Ro, when the world will leave, will no longer be a world that is cursed, arur. Where is the world cursed, by the way? Where is this idea of a world that has curse upon it?
Where Hashem talks to Abraham and he said,
okay, good, interesting, yeah. Okay, good. Okay, that's interesting. I think that may be part of the story. I want to go back to the very beginning of the Torah, where it speaks about a world that is an imperfect world, where Adam and Chava, that they sin in the Garden of Eden, in Gan Eden, and that there are certain curses at that point, that there's certain punishments that the world is now going to endure. The Midrash actually says, you may be familiar with this, that the world itself, that the bark of the tree was supposed to taste like the fruit of the tree, and the world itself somehow does not obey God's command, that there's some imperfection in the world, even in creation. Now that's a really mysterious idea. Now, what does that mean? That God wanted trees to be a certain way and they don't really respond, but somehow that within the world itself, in the world that we know, that there's a world, let's call it a very imperfect world. And that's what Rav Kook is speaking about. A time will come, and we're waiting for that day where those imperfections are going to be fixed. When the world will be freed, she'ein ba shum dofi, where there will be no blemish, no faults in this world. Hi be'emet hashkafat ha'olam ha'yisraeli. This is the hashkafa. This is the perspective of a Jew, of the Jewish people, that we're waiting that day and that we're working towards that day of bringing greater perfection, tikkun olam. That's what it means to be a Jew. That's the way that we see the world, the way that we see the world unfolding, and the way that we see our role or mission in this world. How do we bring a greater perfection to a world that is fractured, a a world that's imperfect. And there's emunah there, the faith that is going to happen, the faith that we're going to realize, there's going to be a realization of that vision, of that dream. Gam achshav, even at this very moment, even when we don't see it, a Jew has that faith. Mitoch shehi kiduma bizman. But because it's an advanced idea, the world is not ready for that idea. It's like hard to grasp that idea. Ein haolam misugal. The rest of the world is not quite ready for that idea, to see the world in that light. Lefichach hi mitkayemet rak bekoach hagadol shel ha'emunah shlema. So therefore it requires a great faith, emunah shlema, and there's the word emunah, which is very important for Rav Kook in this section where he's talking about faith. Shemitgala b'davar niskav. That eventually it's going to be revealed that the world, and the Jew is going to bring this idea to the world, shegam belo yidiah brura. And even, I think what Rav Kook means here, even when we don't fully understand it, we can't fully grasp what that means, a messianic time, a time of tchiyat hametim, a world of perfection, a world of peace. Even though those ideas are very, very distant, but it's something that the Jew lives with a complete faith, emunah shlema, that is going to come about. Rak bechush ruchani, it's something that we feel within our spirits. Samui min ha'ayin is something that we can't quite see. It's hidden from the eye. V'dak ma'od, it's something that's very, very thin, very, very small, like what to actually hold on to that idea. Makirim bo halivavot, but the hearts of the Jewish people, they recognize this idea. Okay, this is the opening. There's a little bit more from Rav Kook, but we'll hold it here for now. So what does Rav Kook say? Part of what it means, emunah. Emunah for a Jew means we have faith in God. We also have faith in a world that is perfecting, and that we are part of that. And our role, our mission is to perfect the world. To kind of sort of appreciate this idea, I want to turn to something that Rabbi Yosef Dov Halevi Soloveitchik, Zatzal, that he speaks about. I think the way that he frames this will be helpful to our conversation. Rabbi Soloveitchik, in a collection of his teaching called Reflections of the Rav, speaks about a Jew and says that a Jew lives in 3 different time frames simultaneously. That all of us, each of us, every Jew and the Jewish people, that we're living in 3 different time frames at the same time. Now, what does he mean by that? And he uses the following words. That's right. He uses, again, the fancy words of Rabbi Soloveitchik. We have retrospection, we have appreciation, and we have anticipation. What's retrospection? That we're thinking about the past, that the past is very much alive for us. Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, these are personalities. They're not just personalities that we read about, but they're very much a part of our lives and who we are and how we see the world. And then the idea of appreciation. What do you understand? What he means by that is the moment, to appreciate the moment that we're in, to appreciate every second, every day, to make the most of it. And then we have the idea, and this is what Rav Kook is referring to in this piece, and that is anticipation. I remember when I was young, there was a commercial for Heinz ketchup. And the song was Anticipation. You remember that? I don't know if you remember that commercial. Anticipating, you have to be an American for this. So anticipating, and they would have the bottle and the ketchup coming out slowly. Anticipation. We're anticipating. So the Jew is anticipating the future. So all of this, the Jew is experiencing these 3 time elements, time frames, all at once. We have a foot in the past. We're here in the moment, and we have a foot in the future as well. Rav Kook really emphasized, I think for Rabbi Soloveitchik, he very much emphasizes the past and how we hold on to the past in the Torah. Rav Kook's perspective, his great emphasis in his writings and his life is let's be very much aware and live with that sense of the future and how the future is unfolding and how Geula is closer and closer. So let me just to read one line. I thought this was, this article of Rabbi Soloveitchik begins the following way. Maybe for many of us here, grandparents, maybe this will speak to us. Or this is the way, interesting, this is the way that Rabbi Soloveitchik kind of describes his experience as a grandfather. A grandfather stands before his newly born grandchild filled with paradoxical thoughts. Feelings of renewal merge with fading memories of the past. So you see the grandchild, you're thinking about the future of this child. You're also thinking about the past, your parents and past generations. For the Torah-committed Jew, this scene has an added dimension. Gazing at the newborn, the grandfather also experiences a sense of generation awareness. And what is generation awareness? And here, Rabbi Soloveitchik, that's all I brought for you from this article. It's the opening of the article, but he talks about time awareness or time consciousness, that we live with this sense of the past. And this is, he puts in this context of looking at a child, of a grandchild, and the thoughts that a person has, past generations, children, future generations. And this is very much a part of how a Jew lives their life, and with a great sense of emunah, faith in the future. And now we turn to Rav Kook, and I want to share with you three different teachings from Rav Kook about the idea of anticipating the future. And here we come to a term which I think we're familiar with, a term that the Gemara speaks about, and that is the importance of what's called Sipita Liyoshua, that we are awaiting a Yeshua, a salvation. So look at what Rav Kook writes. This is from the work Orot HaKodesh, number 3 on your page. Tzipiyat HaYeshua. This is awaiting for the Yeshua, the redemption or the salvation of the Jew, the Jewish people, and all mankind. Tzipiyat HaYeshua, I'm reading from Rav Kook. He mizakeket et hachayim. It purifies a person's life when a person has this sense of awaiting a great day in the future. Marchevet et hadat, it expands a person's consciousness. Ume'adenet et haruach, and it beautifies a person's spirit. When a person has this sense of, and I would say an optimism and a hope and a belief that better days are ahead, and we know what it was like here for the past 2 years and what we went through here in Israel. And to live also, again, with the pain of the moment, right, but also the sense of emunah in a salvation, emunah in better days, emunah in Hashem bringing, the possibility of miracles and of wonders and of better days for the Jewish people. A person who lives that way, with that kind of optimism, with looking towards the future, with a good eye. So such a person, says Rav Kook, it purifies a person's life. It expands a person's consciousness. It beautifies a person's spirit. Rav Kook comments on one of the most well-known Gemaras about Sipita Liyoshua. There's a Gemara that's found in Shabbos Daf Lamed Aleph, and I think everybody here is familiar with this idea, or with this Gemara. And that is that after our time on this earth, after 120 years, we're going to go to Shamayim. And in Shamayim, we're going to stand before the heavenly court. And the Gemara says, on Daf Lamed Aleph in Gemara Shabbos, there are going to be a list of questions that Hashem is going to ask us. The first question is going to be honesty in business, right? And then it goes on with a number of other kavata itim l'Torah. Did you spend time studying Torah? So all of us are going to say, yes, we were here Wednesday mornings, and we never missed. A sakta pirivya involved in family life, bringing family, children to the world. And then famously, God is going to ask, Sipita Liyoshua. Did you live a life? And this, by the way, is really a striking or a startling question of all the things that God is going to ask us when we're standing Shamayim after 120 years. Did you live a life in which you anticipated Sipita Liyoshua, this salvation, the redemption? Were you looking forward? Did you believe with emunah shlema? Did you believe with full faith that yes, the Mashiach can come, better days ahead, that it's a world that is perfecting, that we're moving towards perfection, and that we're part of that process of perfection? So Rav Kook writes the following, and here let's read the words, a few lines from Rav Kook. This is from his Einayah, his famous commentary on the Gemara. He wrote only on the first 2 Masechtot, on Brachos and Shabbos, so we have this piece. If you want to follow along, the very last paragraph on page 1, Sipiyah Liyoshua. V'atzipiyah, says Rav Kook, atzipiyah, this looking, this anticipation, kolelet simat ayin tadirit. It requires focus, constant focus on looking towards that day, the possibility, the potential of that. Gam be'ein shum hakara gluya chitzonit shel Yeshua. Even when you don't necessarily see any sign of that salvation that is unfolding, but to look for it and to anticipate that. And here he writes the following, Kamo shehamitzapeh omed ala mishmar yamim al shana. He says somebody like who is on guard duty, who's standing and watching, and that person needs to watch. That's what they're hired to do. And weeks could go by, months, years can go by, and you don't see anything. Again, thinking a little bit about October 7th as I read this, right? That you are there to watch and to be very careful in that watch. Again, months, years can go by, but you have to be very, very vigilant in your watching. So that's what it means, says Rav Kook, what it means, Sipit al Yeshua, saying that we're always looking out for. What are we looking for? Signs of salvation, of redemption. And then he writes the following, and this is very, very important. Let me just finish that sentence. Even when he doesn't see anything new to respond to, but that person can never leave that post. The one who's watching, that's mitzapeh, the person who is looking out for the signs. And here he writes the following, V'od kalul bazeh, but there's another aspect of what it means, Sipita liYeshua, shebechol et matzo shel ezeh ha'ara. But if you do see something, if there is some sign that needs a response, shireh shira'ui la'asot ezeh davar liYeshua, yachish pe'ulato v'lo ya'azov. It's important, it's critical that if you do see something, that you then respond to that. So that person who's on the lookout, that sees something that needs a response, so it's not enough just to watch for it. You need to respond to it as well. And I think Rav Kook is referring to looking to signs of Yeshua. If the Jewish people are beginning to make their way to the land of Israel, as Rabbi Soloveitchik famously said in his talk called the Dido Fake, if there's a knock on the door of the Jewish people, that's what Rabbi Soloveitchik, he quoted from Shir HaShirim, that God is knocking on the door. How can we not respond to God's knock? There's a sign, right? That's the sign. We've been waiting for it. And now we have Eretz Yisrael. We have the opportunity to come back to the land of Israel. That's what it means, Sipita liYeshua. One is to always be vigilant in watching for those signs, and then to respond to it when we need to. Page 2, top of the page, Rav Kook in a famous piece from Orot, writes the following, and the way to think about Geula, to think about the awaiting the redemption. And here I'll read the Hebrew at the top. It's translated right below. Ha-geula nimshachati ve'olechet. When you think about Geula, it's an ongoing process of Geula. Geulat Mitzrayim. Where did Geula begin? It really began, says Rav Kook, with the redemption from Egypt, the Geula ta'atid hashlema. And the full redemption that will come about, hi pe'ula achat, she'ena poseket. It's one long process. And there's no stop in that process. There's a long process of Geula. Pe'ula hayad hachazaka v'hazroa hanituya. And what does Rav Kook mean by that? That's a phrase that we're familiar with from the Agada, from the Torah. What does the Torah need to say both? Yad hachazaka, a strong hand, and zroa nituya, and an outstretched arm. So Yad HaChazakah refers to what was happening at that moment, that God brought his Yad HaChazakah, his strong hand on Egypt. But what's the Zroa Nituya? The outstretched arm. What that means is that Geula, that process that began in Mitzrayim, that there's a long process. That's the Zroa Nituya, the long process of Geula that we are part of. And as Rav Kook says, and as the Gemara says, we are to be watchful of, and that we are to believe in that process of Geula. Asher Heichela b'Mitzrayim po'elet et pe'ulatea b'chol ha'misibot. And everything that is unfolding is really part of this process. Moshe and Eliyahu, Go'alim Hem, they are both Go'alim, the Geula Echad. They're all part of one redemptive process. Moshe began the process, and Eliyahu is going to come and announce the end, the coming of the Mashiach. Interesting, in the Haggadah, the night of Pesach, which is about Geula, so we begin with the story of Mitzrayim, of leaving Mitzrayim, and the story of Moshe, even though we don't really talk about Moshe Rabbeinu that much, or very little. One time he appears sort of, just somewhere towards the back. But we begin with the story, and where does the story end? On the night of Pesach, what's the highlight as we come to the end? We open the door for Eliyahu Hanavi, right? The beginning of the process is Moshe Rabbeinu, the first Geula, but the ultimate redemption is what we are awaiting, and to believe in that, and to believe in that process. Hamatchil v'hagomer. Moshe started, and Eliyahu will finish. Hapoteach v'achotem, the one who opened, the one who will close. Hem yachad, together, mimal'im et achativa. It's all one unit. V'ruach Yisrael. I like this line. And the spirit of Israel, you can underline this, and the spirit of Israel, makshivhu, and we are listening, et kol hatinua. We're listening for the sounds of the movements of Geulah. Interesting, what's the term that we use for the Mashiach, or that we're in a time that we're moving closer to Mashiach? The ikvita, the Mashiach, the Mashiach. What's the ikvita? The akev, anybody know? The heels, the footsteps, that we're listening, there's a sound, as if there's a sound of Mashiach. And I think for many of us, living here in Eretz Yisrael, and what brought us to Eretz Yisrael is this idea, the sense that we want to be part of this process as we're moving closer and closer to Messianic days, to believe in that. That was the, Rabbi Soloveitchik had a well-known son-in-law, Rav Aaron Lichtenstein Zatzal, who was the Rosh Hashiva of Gush Etzion. And so the father-in-law, Rabbi Soloveitchik, was in America, lived in Boston, taught at Yeshiva University, and his dream, or one of his dreams in his life, was that his son-in-law would become the Rosh Hashiva. He knew that one day he would pass away, and his great son-in-law, Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, would stay in New York and would be the Rosh Hashiva. But he didn't want to stay. He wanted to move to Eretz Yisrael, and with Rabbi Soloveitchik's daughter, they were married, of course. And this is a sort of a famous line from Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, who, by the way, he really liked sports when he was young. I don't know, following, not so much following, but he was a really good basketball player, and he used a lot of sports analogies. So he said, I'm moving to Eretz Yisrael. I'm moving to the land of Israel. This is what he told his father-in-law. Because when you come to a stadium, you can do two things. Either you can be sitting in the stands and you can be watching the game, or you can be on the field and you could be playing the game. You could be making a difference. He says, I don't want to be watching it from a distance. I don't want to be sitting in the stadium. I want to be a player. I want to be part of the unfolding of the redemption. And that's what Rav Kook is saying here as well, that we're aware of this, that we hear it, and that we listen for the ikvita, the footsteps of Mashiach, as Mashiach is getting closer. Let me just read the last line. V'ruach Yisrael makshivhu et kol hatinuot. We listen for the movements. We look for movements that are pointing us towards the Geulah, shel peulot hageulah, actions, what's happening that is part of the Geulah. Haholchot mikol hamisibot, that come about through all the different things that are unfolding, ad malot smichat keren Yeshua, until the moment where there'll be the flowering of the light of redemption, bimlo'ah v'tovah, and all of its fullness, and all of its glory, and all of its goodness. And again, I don't know what brought each of you, I'm sure there are many different reasons, what brought us to the land of Israel, to leave our home, which was not easy to do for all of us, and leave our communities, and leave our families, and what brought us to the land of Israel. I know for myself and for many people, part of it was very much this belief of this Emunah, that Rav Kook says that every Jew should live with a sense of Emunah Shlema, that there's a process of redemption that is unfolding, that we're moving closer and closer, and we're living today in this age, and we are to believe that we're living in a very, very special and a very unique. For 2,000 years, we've been sitting in shtetls and just trying to survive as Jews, and for the first time, the Jewish people, and here we are, 7 million Jews strong in the land of Israel. We're sitting in traffic in Jerusalem. We can't get anywhere with all the building and the light rails and the trains and the I mean, all of this is like unfolding before our eyes. And it's quite amazing. And to feel that and to sense that, Rav Kook says that's part of Emunah, that's part of the faith. And as I say, that we should somehow, as we're sitting in that traffic and we're sitting with all the dust and all the construction around us, the joy, and to feel the Emunah in that as well. Okay. Let me just share a couple of other ideas. And this is really interesting, Rabbi, coming back, and we're sort of sharing Rav Kook and Rabbi Soloveitchik this morning. Rabbi Soloveitchik says, there are certain things that we do to remember, since we've been in the Galut, to remember what it was to be in the land of Israel. And there are things that we do in order to remind us sort of the sadness of being so far from the land of Israel. And he uses the term, he says, that's what's called the Zecher Lechorban. Certain things that we do that are Zecher Lechorban, to remember the destruction, the fact that we don't have a Beit HaMikdash. But then there's another term that's used in halacha, and that's Zecher LeMikdash, things that we do to remember Beit HaMikdash. And he's going to, and as the Soloveitchik family or Soloveitchik always do, this fine distinction between the two. And one, he says, is really about the sadness and about the mourning, and the other is really about the joy and anticipation of rebuilding. So on the sadness, one example of that, and I'm not sure if this is something that you've done or seen, that is when people will build a house, that they will leave a section of the house unfinished. And many will have that as you enter the house, that they'll have, that they don't paint that section, you still see the cement. And that halacha is actually, it's brought lehalacha, that one should do that. I haven't built a house, I just been renting and moving into homes, so I haven't had that. But if one has the schus to have that, or maybe something that you can do living where you are, that's a constant reminder of churban. In other words, that every time that you enter your home, or anyone enters your home, to see an unfinished house. I mean, it's kind of jarring in a way to see a slab. Again, I don't remember really seeing that growing up. People really observing that halacha per se. I see it more in Eretz Yisrael that people do that. But that's halacha across the board. That ideally that one should do that. That's an example of zecher lechurban. But then there's this other part of what it means to remember. And it's not remembering in a sad way, but in a positive way and with anticipation. And this is something that everybody here does. And that is that we put salt on our table, or we put salt on the challah. When we eat challah, we eat the bread. Now, where's that minhag from? Why do we do that? So very simply, and I'll read it to you. Hilchos B'tzias Apas, right in the middle of page 2. Simon Kuf Samach Zayin Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah writes, mitzvah lahavi al kol shulchan. There's a mitzvah to bring on the table. Melach. There should be salt on the table. Kodem shivtza. Before you break bread, before you make hamotzi. Why is that? Ki hashulchan domeh lemizbeach. Things that we're all familiar with. That when we sit at our tables, we should think about the mizbeach. That our home and the table in our home should remind us of the mizbeach. Va'achila ke korban. And what we're eating should remind us of korbanot. Now, when we do that, that's not a sad statement. That's really an anticipation. Now, there was a little bit of a taste, literally a little bit of a taste of what it was like to eat a korban. With every korban, there was melach. And to think about the melach, and to think about korbanot, and to think about anticipation, right? That's sipita liyoshua, that we're anticipating, that we're waiting the day that we'll eat the real korbanot, and we'll eat the meat of korbanot and the salt of the korbanot. So that is, yeah, please, Harry.
So that means not only on Shabbat, but anytime you have...
That is true. Yes, you're right. It's not halacha of Shabbos. Even though I would say most people don't do it during the week. When you get a bagel from whatever, bagel and cream cheese and lot, I don't know, maybe the lox, that's considered having salt in on your bagel. But you're absolutely right. This is not a Shabbos halacha. This is a halacha across the board, that every time that you eat bread, b'tzias hapas, when you're breaking bread, that you have salt with it. Another interesting example of this, and this actually, and I bring this example because Rav Kook, this is something that he saw, and something that he saw from his Rabbi. One of his most influential Rabbeim was the Netziv, who was the great Rosh Hashiva of Elazhin. He was very close with the Netziv. And there's a Haggadah of the Netziv, of his teachings on Pesach. And this is a little piece where Rav Kook, actually his son writes it, and he's sort of transcribing what his father, a memory that he had of a Seder that he had with the Netziv. I mean, it wasn't just him. I think there were like 200, I think it describes 200 students that were at that Seder. But Rav Kook was there with the great Netziv of Elazhin. And one of the first things that the first Dvar Torah, one of the first Divrei Torah that the Netziv gave was about wearing a kittel. Why is it tonight that we're wearing a kittel? I don't know if you ever thought about that, the minhag of wearing a kittel on the night of the Seder. So here, let me just read it to you, to share it with the words of Rav Kook. So this is number 4. Zichroni shebesichotav. I remember in a conversation, his beer, al shumad lovshim kittel besidro shel Pesach. I remember this is Rav Kook's son, who is, again, transcribing, sharing what his father's memory of being at the Seder with the Netziv. And so the Netziv said the following, Achilat korban Pesach hi bechinat mishulchan gavoa kachil. When you eat of the korban Pesach, everybody who ate in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, it was if they were eating, it was really a korban, shulchanos shel melech, as if you were sitting at the table of the king. U'b'Yerushalayim hakiduma b'zman shebeit HaMikdash haya kayam. And where was the Korban Pesach eaten? It was eaten in the city. Everybody had to come to Yerushalayim. Imagine that. Everybody from the whole country making their way for Yantif. You have to eat the Korban Pesach in Yerushalayim. And what did they do? That the custom was that everybody who ate, that they wore a white linen garment. In other words, to look a little bit like a Kohen. Now, everybody was eating in their homes. You don't eat the Korban Pesach in the Beit HaMikdash. You bring it home, and every family eats it. But because it's a little bit like being in the Beit HaMikdash and a Korban, you should wear something that is like Kohen-like. And you should wear a kittel so that everybody sitting at their table should also feel like they're like a Kohen, like they're eating of a Korban, which they are eating of Korban. That's the reason that he gave. Interesting, there are many other reasons. The Taz says that it reminds us of death, and on the night of so much joy that we need to kind of, curtail our joy a bit. And the Netziv says, I simply don't understand that reason. This is the reason, and Rav Kook reports that's the first Dvar Torah that the Netziv gave. So what's interesting is that and I'll take your comment in a moment. So wearing the kittel, what is that to remind us of as we're sitting at the Seder? It's not a sad moment. It's a moment of anticipation. We're putting on the kittel. Maybe we're looking at that kittel. Usually it's the head of the household. Actually, Rabbi Soloveitchik in his Haggadah asked the question, well, everybody should really be wearing the kittel. Why is it that only one person wears the kittel? Okay, I'm not sure the answer to that. But we're seeing that kittel and we're getting a taste, like the salt like the salt that's on our table on Shabbos or any time that we have bread. And we're getting a taste on the night of the Seder. One other thing, and I'll take your comment. And here the Netziv writes, why do we wash our hands before we have the vegetable, the karpas? Does anybody, that's one of the washings that we do. So here, let's read this last line. Nachzor le'inyan shinhigu chazal, very last paragraph. Lasot seder, kamo shasu bizman shachlu psachim. We want to make our seder similar to the way that they would have their seder in Yerushalayim. Umizeh hatam, and for that reason, notilin yadayim l'tivulo b'mashkeh. And here we get into a whole area, which is called Tuma and Tara, which is when a vegetable has liquid on it and it can now become tameh, and therefore we have to wash our hands before. That's why we do it. That's why we're doing it. We're doing something that is Beit HaMikdash-like. And again, this is like a whole area of halacha that we're not really familiar with. We don't practice these halachas today for the most part, but it relates to that halacha. And the Netziv says we're doing that at the Seder. Why are we doing it at the Seder? Because what we're doing, or more than one thing that we're doing at the Seder is trying to capture, trying to feel, right, the sense of anticipation. We're sitting at the Seder, but we want the ultimate. We want the real Seder. We want to be wearing the kittel like they used to. We want to wash our hands like they used to do if there was a vegetable that had liquid on it because of issues of tuma. Yes, did you want to say something?
It was specifically a cloth that, or something we wear, really reminding us of the death. Why can't we wear just on Seder night just another white cloth? Why just has to be the kittel specifically?
Why you're saying the kittel? Because the kittel resembles that according to the Netziv, it resembles what they wore in Yerushalayim. But what are you asking? Why? Because it.
No, I thought the kittel was more like something that really truly you wear once you're dead.
Okay, good. So again, there are those that good. Right, where it's interesting. You wear it on Yom Kippur, right? And that yes, the Mefarshim say that relates possibly to death, that a person should. Others say it relates to being angel-like, the white and the purity of being cleansed of one's sin. And there are those who say what you said. Maybe the night again. There are those those that say on the night of Pesach, it's a way to curtail some of the simcha with all the joy of the night, even though the Netziv outright rejects that, does not understand that at all. If that were true, then we would wear a kittel on all Shlosh Regalim if we have to curtail the joy. And he says the kittel in this circumstance that's his interpretation. We are emulating what was done, and we are anticipating the eating of Korban Pesach that we do not have. Yes, did you? Yeah, please.
Ethiopians
Yeah, what do they do?
wear white, or men and women wrapped in white cloth
And you're talking about for Pesach?
for tefillot.
Or for Tefillot. Okay. Maybe there's something there as well. Okay, let's go now to the top of page 3. One more quote from from Rav Kook and from the writings of Rav Kook, the top of page 3. Makes an interesting statement. One line, one sentence. Im yavo adam, and here you have it in Hebrew at the top and translated as well. Im yavo adam lamar. If a person says to you the following, Shehu motzeh et kol milui ha'orah shel HaTorah, that he has found all the light, all the beauty of Torah and the mitzvot, mitzad matzav hahovel levado, that he has found all the beauty in Torah at this moment, at this time, in this place. Al tishmalo, do not listen to that person. If a person says, I've found the beauty and all the beauty and grandeur of Judaism in the way that I'm observing Judaism in my life or in my community, do not believe such a person. Sounds like a striking statement. Simanhu, that's a sign. Shelo chadar litok omek ha'inyan. He has not penetrated the depths shel tzipiyata Yeshua. He is not living with a sense of anticipation of the future. Now, what is Rav Kook referring to here? So we were just talking about the Seder. Seder night, we sit down with our families. We have the matzah, the maror, the charoset. We have the matzah balls. We have the chicken soup. And we all feel that it's the most beautiful, perfect night. But should a Jew feel that way on the night of Pesach? Rav Kook says you're missing something if you feel that everything is perfect, if everything is beautiful, because you don't have the essence of the night of Pesach, and that is Korban Pesach. You're not eating the Korban Pesach. By the way, the maror, which we eat today, is only a din derabanan, they say, right? It's only derabanan because it's not eaten properly, and a lot of Jews don't recognize that. I don't know if I sort of lived that way or grew up that way, of what's missing, that there's a longing for something more. I always tell this story, Rabbi Yosef Tzvi Rimon, he is the chief rabbi of the Gush, lives in Neve Daniel, one of the outstanding poskim of this generation, leaders of the religious Zionist community. I'm sure you have seen him, maybe read some of he's written a lot. He goes through all of halacha from the very, quite amazing what he's done. So he tells a story, you probably have heard this story, I've told it here, but he goes to, he's on a trip in Manhattan, he has meetings in Manhattan, and he's spending some time there, and he's running from meeting to meeting. He hasn't eaten yet, so he runs down to in Manhattan they call it a bodega. I don't know if you know that. You know what a bodega is? Whatever. He goes down to a little supermarket, comes into the supermarket, he picks up an apple, let me eat something. As he picks up the apple, in his mind, he's now going through all of the halachos. Now he's saying, there's truma, there's possible meiser that needs to be taken. Is this a Shemitah year? Going through all of the halachot in his mind. And then he kind of takes a step back and says, I'm in Manhattan right now, and none of these halachot apply to an apple outside the land of Israel. And he said, I just put down that apple and walked out of the store. I could not eat an apple that doesn't have any kedusha ta'aretz. Anything that have all of that does not have the halachot of Eretz Yisrael. So here Rav Kook says, if you're living a life, and yes, you have all of this Judaism, but this yearning that we should have for Shemitah and for Yovel and for Beit HaMikdash and for Korbanot and for Tuma and Tahara, there's a whole world of halacha that we're not able to keep yet, even here in Eretz Yisrael. There's a whole discussion. Shemitah today, midaraisa, midarabanan, the Truma and Meiser, everyone basically agrees that it's only on a derabanan level. There's so much of Judaism and of our ritual and practice, our observance, that we're not able to observe today. So a Jew should never say, if a Jew says to you, my Judaism is perfect, how wonderful it is, to live in New York or even in Yerushalayim, that everything is perfect, say, no, it's not perfect yet. And that's part of what it means, anticipation, sipita liyeshua. That's what it means to have emunah, to have that faith in the future. Okay, just to come to a close, Rav Kook speaks about this in a very beautiful way in the bracha that we make. And here I think we can already begin to talk about Chanukah. As I was walking on the street here, I overheard a woman that was saying she was already making a date. Likrat Chanukah, I'll meet you, right before Chanukah. So Chanukah's already, it's not quite in the air, but we'll say it's already in the air. This coming Shabbos is the 24th of Mar Cheshvan. Sunday is the 25th. So this Sunday is 1 month to Chanukah. Okay, 1 month away, so we can share a Hanukkah idea. So Rav Kook says the following: the bracha itself that we say on the Nerot Hanukkah, lehadlik ner shel Chanukah. And he asked the question, well, I understand the first night that you say lahadlik ner because it's a single candle, but then we go to 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 8. We should say lahadlik nerot shel Chanukah. That's a question that he asks. Like, why do we not change? It's accurate the first night, but once we move to the plural and we're lighting more than one, it should become nerot. So he writes the following. And here I'll just to highlight the very first line. This is from his Siddur. If you're looking page 3, right in the middle, La'alik ner shel Chanukah. HaChanukah. When we think about Chanukah, hamushpa'at, that is impacted or influenced me ha'atid, from a future hayoter na'ala, that is more elevated. When you think about Chanukah, what is Chanukah? Chanukah is celebrating the past. Right? It's the great miracle. We're remembering the miracle. But Rav Kook says that when we think about Hanukkah and the holiday and how to light the Hanukkah menorah, we're really thinking about the future as well, how this is connected to the future. We're actually, when I was speaking earlier about Zecher LeChorban or Zecher LeMikdash, when we stand in front of the menorah, which we'll do in just about a month, so what are we supposed to think about? Is that a sad moment of thinking about what we don't have? I don't think we think about it that way at all. It's a moment of celebration, and it's a moment of anticipation that I'm lighting this menorah, and we're anticipating a lighting of a menorah again in the Beit HaMikdash. We're getting a little bit of a taste. Interesting way to think about it. I don't think we usually think about it that way. A little bit of a taste of the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash, a little bit of a taste of that the menorah will be lit again. The way that we taste the salt on our challah, to think a little bit about the melach, the salt that's on korbanot. So he writes the following. He says all the branches, again, just to kind of summarize this long paragraph, but he says that all the different branches in the eyes of Rav Kook, they all represent all different factions, all different groups of the Jewish people in a good way, that were made up of all different communities. But in the days of Mashiach, what's going to happen? All those lights are going to come together. There's going to be a great synthesis. There's going to be a great uniting of the Jewish people. What we've thought about for a long time is this community, and you're Sephardi, and I'm Ashkenaz, and you're Hasidish, and I'm Litvish, and you're this, and you're that. But when the Mashiach comes, so we're all going to come together. There's going to be one great light of the Jewish people. Look at the last 2 lines of Rav Kook. Al kain lo neirot ne'emru bebracha. We don't use the term, they're the candles that we're lighting, or the lights, shel Chanukah, shehi nosa'at dea ad hamerchak hayoter niskaf. When we make this bracha, what are we thinking about, says Rav Kook? We're thinking about that elevated, that lofty vision of the future where all those lights become one. Ad hatid hayoter elyon v'ne'eratz be'oz Hashem, that time of the lofty vision of the future, and therefore ki'im ner shel Chanukah. It looks like a lot of candles, but it's really one candle. We're one people. An interesting way to think about the menorah as well it's certainly not Zecher LeChorban. It's not about destruction. It's about anticipation. As we stand, it's a beautiful kavanah to have, as we stand before the menorah, to think about where we have a little bit of a taste of that menorah we're going to have it again. There's going to be a Beit HaMikdash, and there's going to be a day of where all these lights become one light, and all the branches of the Jewish people are going to become one branch all together. There's going to be unity. There's going to be peace. I'll just end with the following. I open with just mentioning that my mother-in-law passed away just over a week ago, and my wife sat shiva here. She went back to America to finish the shiva. She's coming back tomorrow, but I sat shiva right next to her. I wasn't sitting shiva as a son-in-law. Officially, you're not sitting shiva. It was a bit of a shiva for me as well, losing my mother-in-law. But as you're sitting in a shiva, all the people that are coming, and of course the phrase that everybody says of Amakom Yenachem Eschem B'Soch Shar Avileitz Yom Yerushalayim. So you wish that person that they should be comforted amongst those that are mourning Jerusalem, right? The destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. I think one of the ideas is that we're expressing to the mourner that we're all mourning to some degree, right? That's the Chorban part, that all of us, and that we're all together in this. You're mourning. It's a much more acute mourning, a much more painful mourning, but all of us as a people are mourning at this time, and we should all, and we feel together that there's something that we're sharing. Maybe that's part of what we're saying when we say Hamakim Menachem. But I thought about one other, just thinking about it over this past week, one other idea is that when we say to the mourner that we're mourning with you, with the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, we're also expressing the idea that we all know that that Beit HaMikdash will be rebuilt. We have that Emunah, we have that Emunah Shlema, that a time will come that the Beit HaMikdash will be rebuilt again. So maybe we're expressing to the mourner, we're mourning for the Beit HaMikdash, and you are also mourning, and just as the Beit HaMikdash will be rebuilt, a time will come, and again, in a very subtle, maybe a hidden way, a time will come where you will be comforted as well. And what do I mean by that? That there'll be a Tchiyat HaMeitim. A time will come when the Beit HaMikdash, in a messianic age, that those that we have lost in life, all of us, those that we have lost in life, we believe, the Rambam has it as the 13th principle of faith, that they will come back to life. The Rambam says that is an essential belief of a Jew. Not only that a neshama exists or continues on, but in life that we will again be with our loved ones, physically, in our physical bodies, that we'll be together again. That's Tchiyat HaMeitim. We believe in that. That's an essential, not only is it a belief, the Rambam says it's one of the 13 essential beliefs of a Jew is Tchiyat HaMeitim. So maybe that's what we're saying as well when we wish somebody Hamakam Yenachem Eschem B'soch Sha'ar Avelei Tzion Yerushalayim, just as we are mourning for Jerusalem and we know that the Beit HaMikdash is going to be rebuilt. So in your mourning also know that that day will come as well. Again, it's not a time to, I don't think it's a time, and maybe it's not a time to say that. It's a time of mourning, but in a subtle way, in a way that gives strength, right? That day will come as well, a day where all of us will be reunited with our loved ones. So that is what Rav Kook says, and Rav Kook very much lived that belief and really taught us as a people. It's time for us to really hold fast to that belief of the Emunah Shlema in the great perfecting of the world, of Ikvita de Mashiach, that we're living at a very, very unique time. And the fact that we're here, and the fact that we've chosen to live in Israel, and the fact we're not just watching it, it's something that we are participating in, living here every day, contributing, and we pray the Emunah Shlema with full faith that we should see the coming of Mashiach, the Meher of Yameinu. Amen.